Hi everyone, here's your Rancho stretch routine. So I'm going to do the talking and John's going to do the stretching. So we'll start like we did every morning with a stretch for the neck and the large intestine. John has his right arm at a right angle. He uses his left hand cupped around his elbow as the helping hand to rotate his arm across his body for a stretch in the back of his neck and shoulders. He's going to do about 6 reps. He relaxes as he returns to the start position and then re-engages, resists, contracts, flexes his right arm for the stretch while his left arm overcomes the resistance and brings his arm to center. Just going to do 1 more rep here and switch sides. Shake out his arms a second. Then he puts his left arm at a right angle, resists, contracts, flexes, and uses his right hand cupped around his left elbow to bring his left arm to center for a stretch in the back of his neck and in his deltoid on his left side. 6 reps on both sides. So we've got a couple more left. Stretch also really helps with the large intestine and if you have high blood pressure problems. Shake those out. Now we're going to go into the small intestine for the shoulders and the scapula area. He's going to clasp his palms together. They're going to press together while he brings his elbows together. His palms are above his head or at the height of his forehead, no lower than his nose. He's going to continue to press his palms together while he brings his elbows together, creating a lot of tension in the outsides of his arms and in his shoulders. Couple more here. Last one, pressing his arms together really tightly as he brings his elbows together. Relax, shake those shoulders out. Now he's going to do a stretch for the front of the body for the pericardium. He's going to turn to the side so we can see it a little bit better. The whole time he's going to feel like his hands want to pull apart. They're clasped together behind his back. He continues to pull his hands apart while he bends at the waist and lifts his hands above. And you can see he's not doing a big range here. Pulls his hands apart to contract his chest and his biceps while he bends at the waist and lifts his arms above his head. In John's case, he doesn't have a lot of range. You might have a little bit more range, but you know the stretch is over when you can no longer contract your chest by pulling your hands apart. Just going to do a couple more here, about 6 reps of each stretch. Last one, really pulling those hands apart while he bends at the waist and lifts his arms above his head. Great. Now we're going to get down onto the floor, onto our back. John's not going to use a pillow under his head, but if you want one, grab one for your neck. We're going to start with a stretch for the gallbladder meridian, the IT band on his right leg. He puts his ankle on top of his left knee, interlaces his hands behind his left thigh, presses his right ankle into his knee and his left leg away from his body while he uses his hands to bring both legs into his chest. The stretch happens with your arms starting straight and away from your body, and as you bring your legs into your chest, your arms bend. If you resist maximally, you won't be able to make the movement with your hands, so only resist as much as your hands can win. After about 6 reps, switch sides, interlace your hands behind your right leg, drive that left ankle into the top of your knee, and use your hands to bring both legs into your chest. Now we're getting a stretch on the outside of the left thigh and into the glute, the IT band associated with the gallbladder meridian. Just a few more reps here. You can see both feet are flexed. That's helping him get a better stretch. Excellent, last rep. Now he's going to do a stretch for the adductors, the inside of the thigh. He's going to put either his hands or his elbows, whichever's comfortable, on the insides of his knees. And while his legs squeeze together, he uses his hands to open them apart for a stretch on the inside of the thighs. Squeezing together, he uses his hands for a stretch on the inside of the thighs. Again, John's lifting his head himself. If that's uncomfortable for your neck, just put a pillow under your neck. He also has the tops of his hands on the inside of his knees. If that's uncomfortable for you, you could put your hands behind your knees and open. You could turn your wrist the other way on the inside with your palms facing in and open your legs. You can also see that he's leading with his feet. Let's do one more so you can see how his feet go out first and you get a slightly more intense stretch in those adductors on the inside of the thigh, and that's for the liver meridian. Now he's going to go into the sexual meridian. We're going to do the stomach meridian next, the quads. So he's going to interlace his hands behind his left leg, that's the target leg. He's going to take his right heel and put it on top of his left shin and use his right leg to bend his left leg for a stretch in the left quad, the top front of the thigh. The stretch kind of burns pretty quick, so you don't have to resist maximally. If you do resist maximally, you're going to find it's really hard to bend your leg. So pull back on the resistance a little bit, and if it's burning too much, you can do fewer reps. Again, he's kicking his left leg up towards the ceiling while he uses his right leg to bend his leg for a stretch in the quad associated with the stomach meridian. Now he's going to switch sides, interlace his hands behind his right knee, and use his left heel on top of his right shin to bend his right leg for a stretch in the right quad. Again, his right leg is kicking up towards the ceiling while he uses, his left leg to stretch it. I was right. His right leg is kicking up towards the ceiling while he uses his left leg to bend it for a stretch in the quad. Just a few more reps here. Last one, just 6 reps on each leg.
One more.
Sorry, we got one more. I miscounted. There we go. Now we're going to move into the hip flexors, the sexual meridian. So John's going to bring his right leg up into his chest. He's going to stomp his left leg down into the ground, and he's going to use his hand to push his leg away from his chest for a stretch in the hip flexors on the front of the body. He can feel the tension in his core all the way up into his chin. Brings his knee into his chest and uses his hand to push it away. You can use both hands if you want, and again, for all of these stretches, you could have a pillow behind your neck to support it. Just going to do a few more reps here, bringing his knee into his body while he uses his hand to push it away. We just have one more rep there. Now we're going to switch legs, brings his left leg up into his body while he uses his left hand to push it away. He's stomping or driving his right leg into the ground. So it's almost like a scissor effect. Bringing his left leg up into his body while his right leg pushes into the ground for a stretch in the hip flexors and the whole front of the body, the core, the stomach, the chest, and up into the face. Just a couple more reps here. This is for the hip flexors or the sexual meridian. I miscounted on this one a lot. Now he's going to come up and we're going to go into the hamstrings. We'll start with a hamstring lunge for the central hamstring or the brain meridian. He takes his opposite hand and puts it on the ground to balance himself, and he takes his right hand and puts it on his right hamstring, the back of his thigh. He lunges forward, horse kicks his heel into the ground, his toes come up, his hamstrings contract, he can feel it with his hand, and then he sits his hips back for 1 rep for a stretch in his hamstring. Lunges forward again, horse kicks that foot into the ground to contract his hamstring, and then sits back for a stretch. Returns to the start position. Remember, we're relaxing when we return to the start position. The stretch happens as soon as you are in the lunge forward position and you kick your heel into the ground and then you lean back while you maintain the resistance or the contraction. You can pause before you lengthen to make sure that you have that hamstring engaged. If you find that you're just moving passively, pause in between reps and you'll get a much better stretch. You'll engage the hamstring. Again, he's going to lunge forward, kick that heel into the ground. His toe comes up. He can feel his hamstring contracted, and then he lengthens. He relaxes, returns to the start position, kicks his foot into the ground, and lengthens. Again, kicks that foot into the ground, toe comes up and lengthens. Kicks that foot into the ground and back towards his body and lengthens. Can really feel the hamstring contract for each rep. We got one more here. Kick that heel into the ground, sit back and lengthen. Now we're going to switch to the medial hamstring for the pancreas. That was the central hamstring brain meridian. Now we're going to the medial hamstring. He puts his left arm on the inside of his leg. His shoulder and knee are pressing into one another, and he puts the space in between his thumb and pointer behind his heel. He lunges forward, kicks his heel into that space in his hand, presses his knee into his shoulder, and sits back for a stretch in the medial hamstring, which is the back inside of the leg. We're going to do 6 reps here. He relaxes when he goes to the start position, really lunges forward, really kicks that heel into his hand, presses his shoulder into his knee, and sits back for the stretch. One more, last one, kicks that heel into his hand, presses his knee into his shoulder, and sits back for the stretch. Now we're going to switch sides. This time, the right arm is on the inside of the right leg. He presses the inside of his right knee into the outside of his right shoulder, and he kicks his heel into the space between his thumb and his pointer to engage his hamstring, his medial hamstring, the back inside of the leg, while he sits back for the stretch. Lunges forward, kicks that heel into his hand, and then lunges back for the stretch. 2 more. He's going to kick that heel into his hand and lunge back for the stretch. Really press your knee and your shoulder into one another for each rep and sit back for the stretch. That's great. That's a great stretch if you have plantar fasciitis. Now we're going to go into a stretch for the lateral hamstring, also good for the bladder meridian. If you suffer from low back pain or you get up all night to go to the bathroom, this is a great stretch for you. So the weight's going to be predominantly on the ball of his right leg. His right leg is the target leg, the back outside. John's balancing with his left hand. If you want, you can put both of your arms on the seat of a chair. As long as your shoulders are beneath your hip height, you're fine. He's slowly lifting that left leg and internally rotating at the hip to get a stretch on the lateral hamstring on the right leg. He's not trying to lift his leg high, and he's going slow. The weight, again, is on the ball of his right foot, and he has a slight bend in his right leg for the entire repetitions. One more. You're going to really feel this on the back outside of the down leg. Shaking it off a minute. Now he's going to go into the left leg. Slight bend in that left leg. Weight is on the ball of his foot, balancing himself with his right hand, and he raises and internally rotates his right leg for a stretch on the lateral hamstring on the left side. Every time he lifts his leg, it counts as a rep. He's going slow, and he is not trying to lift his leg high. He brings his leg all the way back down to the ground for the start position, as close to his other foot as he can. Just got one more rep here. Really good. Now we're going to go back down into our chest. We call this a reverse push-up. This is the lung meridian. We called it squeezing the beach ball. If you suffer from asthma, this is a great stretch. So what John's going to do is squeeze his hands together. He feels like his thumbs are going to touch, while he just lowers his face and his chest down in a plumb line between his hands for a stretch in his biceps and his pecs, his chest. At the beginning of the rep, he squeezes those thumbs together and he can feel his chest and his biceps contract, while he lowers his face down in a plumb line and his chest straight down to lengthen out his chest and engage the pecs, also improving the health of his lungs. Squeezing those thumbs together between each rep and lowering himself straight down. Just have one more rep, squeezing those thumbs together and lowering himself down. Now we're going to go into kneeling twist, we call this one, again for the large intestine and for the neck and shoulders. So John's going to take his opposite elbow and put it on the outside of his opposite knee. In this case, it's his right elbow and his left knee. He's using his left hand to bring his right forearm into his body, and he follows with his gaze. You can see he's using the palm of his hand and his fingers are facing down towards the ground, his helping hand. That gives you the best leverage. And he follows with his gaze so that he doesn't cause a strain in his neck. He's really pressing his elbow into his knee and he's resisting while he brings his right forearm into his side and follows with a gaze. You're going to feel this on the neck and top of the shoulders on the right side in this case. Now he's going to switch sides, take his left elbow and put it on the outside of his right knee, and they're pressing into one another. That's the first point of resistance. He's going to use his right arm to bring his left forearm into his body and follow with his gaze. One more, or probably like 3 more reps. Sorry, lost count there. Again, he's getting a stretch in the neck and shoulders on his left side here. This is for the neck and the large intestine. 2 more reps. Really engage those legs. John's giving me little tips about things I'm forgetting to say, but you guys can't hear him. Excellent. You should be feeling pretty good at this point. Last 2 stretches for the lats and for the top of the shoulder. So this one's for the appendix meridian and the lats. His forearms are pressing into the ground and his hands are pressing into the ground. His palms are up towards the ceiling. He's going to drive his knees back, his elbows back towards his knees and sit back on his heels for a stretch in the lats that run along the ribs and along the back. They're kind of like angel wings on the back of your body. Again, he's pressing his forearms and his palms into the ground and his elbows back towards his knees as he sits back for a stretch. Relaxes and goes back to the start position. Really presses those forearms into the ground, elbows back towards the knees, and sits back on his heels for a stretch in the lats. Appendix meridian. Can really see him contracting and engaging before he sits back to lengthen. Now he's going to do the reverse for the top of the shoulders. This is the thymus meridian and for your internal immune system. So he starts sitting back, presses his forearms and his hands away from him, curls his toes under and uses his legs to propel him forward. So his forearms and his hands are pressing away from him towards the front, and his toes are propelling his torso forward to get a stretch all along the top of the shoulders and the neck. You can see he's really resisting himself. He presses those hands away in the beginning. You can see him do it, curls his toes under and drives his torso forward. One more. Press those arms forward, curl those toes under, press the torso forward. Excellent stretch. Internal immune system. So when you feel like you're getting a cold or feeling sick, that's a great stretch, great winter stretch. So you just got a full body, head to toe, Rancho. Wonderful being with everyone. Stay tuned for more.